All right, hello, I'm Matt Hook. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing John Kilduff. John has been the host of Let's Paint TV, a public access show turned viral phenomenon since 2002. Show has been cited as a chief inspiration for absurdist comedians such as Eric Andre. Thank you for joining me today, John.
Thanks for having me.
So how did you first come up with Let's Paint TV?
I was previously, before doing Let's Paint TV, I did another cable access show called The Jim Barry Show. And I was doing that for about 5 or some odd years. And I kind of ran through all the possible, all the things that I wanted to do, and friends and people stopped participating in my show. It was kind of a skit-oriented show.
Oh, like sketch comedy.
Sketch comedy, correct. And so at some point, it just became me, and I was just ending up doing the show on my own more times than not. So, and I'm a painter anyway. You know, I'm an artist. So it just made sense to just finally do a how to paint show. Mm-hmm. So it was actually in 2001 is when I actually did the first show.
So, I mean, but your kind of show, it's much different from your average, like, Bob Ross style
Correct.
how to paint show. How did you come up with the idea of, like, you doing all of these, like, multitasking, like, for example, painting while you're shaving, painting while you're on a treadmill and making a blended drink? Like, how did you kind of come up with those ideas?
Well, I think it had something to do with the concern on my part of, or wanting to be somewhat more entertaining than straight ahead kind of boring educational, which is what, you know, a how to paint show generally is. I've never liked the how to paint shows. You know, they're not very interesting, or maybe they are interesting, but they're not something that I care to watch. And I guess, you know, combine that with some of the other skits, kind of trying to be funny type of aspect of the other show that I was doing. It just sort of made sense to start throwing in the sort of the kitchen sink, if you will, to a how to paint show.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, because I know one of your newest segments is your dream segment on Let's Paint. Would you mind describing that?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's was started as a Kickstarter, a way to raise some funds. As an artist, you're always trying to figure out how to make survive at it, and so Kickstarter's kind of good in that way if you can hustle it to make it work. A lot of people don't succeed at it because you got to really work hard at it in terms of bugging people. But anyway, this dream thing, in my dreams, art residency. It's the only art residency that is open to everybody, and it all happens in my dreams. So when I go to bed at night, I welcome people to come into my dreams, and so there's endless space. There's all the facilities, all the materials, everything you need is there inside in the dreams, in the dream state. And so it was sort of an open-ended premise that then, as I developed more with offering rewards through the Kickstarter aspect in terms of giving people, you know, giving them something for their donations, I started drawing and painting people's dreams. And so started doing it through the Let's Paint TV show, the on stream, you know, do it on the internet now. So basically taking people's calls, calling in one after another, and I would just listen to them tell me their dreams, and while that was happening, I was drawing them, and then subsequently I'd paint some of them. So it was really quite a fun thing. I kind of I'm not kind of taking a break a little bit because I'm fulfilling now the Kickstarter orders, if you will. And so, but I'd like to get back into that. I really thought it was a fun premise. It was very kind of had a therapeutic kind of feel to it.
Yeah, definitely, especially because you're a lot of times, dreams. I have a lot of connection, like people feel very connected to their dreams. So if they describe something very memorable, it's probably really cool to see like you interpret their own dream in your own kind of unique art style.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if you what I discovered is that as I drew over 100+ dreams. So I'm listening to people's dreams, and so I'm making, and these are the very best memorable dreams for all these people. And so if you think about that as opposed to an individual, like if I just only drew my own dreams, I wouldn't have such a plethora of possibilities. It would just be kind of limited. And so it was fun and exciting, and really I got a whole treasure trove of information to work from to paint and develop potentially if I could get my act together.
Were there any dreams that were especially memorable that people asked you to paint?
It was just a ton of them. Just I can name you a couple of them right off the bat. There was one woman who had dreamt that she had her head chopped off during the French Revolution with Marie Antoinette, and then later on, her and Marie Antoinette were at like a dinner party, holding their chopped off head in their laps, while people were drinking and celebrating.
Wow, sounds like Sigmund Freud would have quite a fun time with that one.
I guess so. I mean, whatever, I don't know. I guess there's something to it, I guess. Yeah, there's just a lot of visually interesting things. Another guy had a dream where he was swimming in a lava, and everybody else was swimming like it was like casually swimming in a lava sea, just weird stuff like that. Yeah. And I think some people were actually you could kind of tell that they were kind of making it up, their dreams.
You thought it was just a little too unusual?
Yeah, well, it seemed like, there's one or two too many of these UFO type of dreams, which I'm kind of suspecting, not certain that it really, there's a lot of dreams that people really have with UFOs, even though people like to have these kind of dreams or talk about them.
But I mean, UFOs are such like a universal cultural phenomenon. I wouldn't be that surprised if a lot of people kind of share similar memories of that.
Yeah, well, along with that, there's also a lot of TV. What I found is a lot of people's dreams, and in my dreams too, is so influenced by what they were watching the night before, Like a handful of times I'm asking the caller, well, were you watching, what's that show where it's just zombies attacking people all the time?
The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead.
Yeah, Walking Dead. And yeah, sure enough, they were watching Walking Dead, the night before, and that's why they had, basically a Walking Dead dream. So, yeah. Those were kind of, I mean, I get it, but they were not the more interesting dreams,
Yeah, the more interesting dreams kind of gave you a little more of a peek into the person's personality, you think? Or?
Yeah, there could be definitely that aspect for sure. What I was finding too in dreams is, what I discovered was that there's sort of an up and down aspect, and there's always sort of a bad part to the dream, sort of the nightmarish part, but there's also these good parts, and I wanted to kind of maybe, I felt like I was helping heal people's nightmares into trying to somehow twist it, and so that it was more of a positive dream, which I kind of think that it's a way to look at it at the very least, that your dreams could be interpreted in a positive way, even if it is, kind of awful.
Mm-hmm. That's probably very beneficial, especially if it's like a reoccurring kind of nightmarish dream, to kind of see it.
Yeah. Like this one guy, he called up and he was like a rapper, or he performs as a rapper, and he had this kind of dream where an older gentleman was talking to him in a sexual way, basically, and he didn't know, it just, bothered him, because he didn't really want to appreciate, accept it. It was not invited. He was not inviting this, and this is in his dream. And so what I thought maybe could be the case was that not so much it was a sexual thing that he had to worry about. It was more that maybe someone was trying to take advantage of his, his singing, or, talent, his career, more business as opposed to sexual.
Oh, like more of a metaphor.
Yeah, I think I felt that was the case with this guy. Yeah.
So what is your general philosophy when you're making a painting?
Well, I mean, I think it varies from day to day, and it maybe moves on. I mean, the philosophy is that, yes, I kind of have the technology, I have the wherewithal, I'm kind of, I feel confident with the way I paint to some degree, and yet I also have plenty of doubts. But I think ultimately, the philosophy is just to get going, get moving, and move the paint around, and get started, and kind of let that happen, let something happen from that. But there's a lot of different emotions happen when you do a painting, when you work, start from start to finish. There's the feeling of, you go from an idea, well, geez, I'm really great. I'm just a super great, artist. I'm the greatest painter on earth. And then 2 minutes later, you realize, God, I'm not terribly, I got a lot, I got a long ways to go. So so anyway, you can't let that, these ups and downs, you just have to maybe know that they're always going to be there, maybe, and the struggle is kind of maybe that's the hardest part, maybe, for a lot of people, and that's why they give up on creativity and give up on being an artist. But you just get over that, and or accept it. I think it's it's kind of part of the process.
Oh, I got you. So, like, accept your own kind of personal style in painting.
Maybe, could be. I mean, but also be willing to change it, or experiment, and to, I like to say fail, embrace failure. I like to say that a lot. But, the multitasking and the experimentation, to not be so focused. There's a tendency, I think, with artists to kind of be so tunnel vision with the one task at hand, and I think most people, I think, feel that that's what you're supposed to do, as a sort of a popular thought on that is that's how you approach the process of making art, is to be very focused on the task at hand, and it's one task that and I guess that it can work, that works, but it doesn't work for everyone. And I think for myself, I think I excel through being sort of disjointed and being all over the place, or at least I like it. And it gives me, if anything, it gives me an excuse.
You like to kind of do a bunch of different projects at once?
Yeah, potentially to do a lot of projects at once, but also just in the painting of whatever project, or whatever project you're involved in, to be sidetracked, and like be even not focused. It'd be listening to music, or talk radio, or doing other aspects, as opposed to just being strictly focused. I find that is a good thing, as much as because most, there's scientists out there talking about, well, multitasking's bad for you, and this is the curse of society, that we are being inundated with all these things that we do, and we need to slow down. Well, I'm not so sure about that.
That's interesting, because your show is definitely like established you as like probably the king of multitasking. Like,
well, I don't know about king, but maybe maybe the court jester of multitasking probably be the more appropriate term. But
so when you are multitasking, like in the way, like when you are doing multiple things at once, how do you ensure that you still do have a focus in painting, that like the product still comes out?
It's obviously, it's more of a I'd say it's more of a mantra than really being, it's not something that I don't, that I'm always applying all the time, because it is true that but it's always questionable in terms of what is the end result, and particularly in art. It is always an ongoing battle of well, do we have full-on clarity and accuracy in the art making, or in the painting itself, if we're talking about painting, or can we have full-on action, action and other aspects that really are not limited to that are ultimately not they do not come about from this sort of tunnel vision focus. So for myself, I go back and forth with that. I'm battling with that, because obviously if I'm on a bicycle painting, the end result is a kind of a very expressionistic, gestural kind of movement of paint. And what kind of focus is there? Well, there is limited focus in the maybe a conventional sense, but there is clearly, so when you're all over the place, you still find a way to focus, say on what's on ahead of you. It's not necessarily a one or the other, and I think basically you can, sort of think of the tornado. It's like when you're in the eye of the tornado, apparently, which I've never been in one, but apparently it's quite calm, isn't it? Apparently, is that the story?
Yeah, that in the eye of a hurricane, that's where like there's no wind.
Okay, so it's the eye of the hurricane. Okay, so maybe it's something like that, where you have, when you get inside that, then you actually do figure out how to focus by the through but if you kind of veer out of it, then you get distracted. Maybe that's what it is. But like I said, I don't always apply those ideas all the time in my art making. I also just do straight ahead painting, and not terribly get distracted in a sense. But I guess going further here, I have painted for years outside on location. They call it plein air painting, and I always found that had a lot of distractions. From with cars driving by, people asking you questions, the sun, all these different things that could be distracting, and yet you find a way to be focusing on your painting. So in some ways, the multitasking inside the studio was came about from that 30 plus years of painting outdoors. And so that I brought it in the studio practice a little bit,
to kind of emulate that. feeling of a little bit of chaos going on around you.
Yes, I think I like that. I guess I'm a little afraid of the quiet.
You need a little background noise to help keep you
Maybe,
focused.
maybe. I mean, but at the same time, I guess, we'll see how it goes. Because I like some quiet time too.
So when you're doing normal paintings, like for example your Dream series, do you put on something in the background or is it complete quiet?
Yeah, I can kind of be. I'll usually turn on the sort of like internet radio, or that could be the case. Um, it varies in terms of the things that I do. You know, but yeah, I've been listening to a lot of radio for the most part. WFMU there in Jersey City, I listen to a lot of them at times.
Gotcha. So just to have a nice kind of background noise. Do you try to listen to like specific genres, or you just general?
Right. Yeah, I never really had a particular interest, but I had liked as a kid growing up, say the local college radio station. And and because they would play basically all types of stuff, so I never, I've always basically hated, sort of FM radio stations. I just cannot listen to that stuff. It just drives me crazy. And though I do, or I have listened to quite a lot of AM radio, but that's a lot of talk radio.
Yeah, that's mainly going to be like kind of political talk radio or just local news.
It can be, yes, and then also a lot of sports talk. I'll listen to some sports talk. It's fun to listen to just like a baseball game, a football game, just in the background. I like listening to that kind of stuff, I guess, even if I could care less about what's really happening, I was just, the other, I was stretching some canvas and I had the radio on and I was listening to a bowl game between Toledo, Toledo and Appalachian State or whatever, and I definitely, those are not my. I do not follow those two teams, though. I think the Toledo. I do believe Toledo is called the Racers, right? The Toledo Racers.
I'm not actually 100% sure on that one either. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not much of a college football fan myself.
Yeah, though Appalachia State is the Mountaineers, which that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Appalachian State Mountaineers. Yeah. So, what was it like? I know you've had a couple more mainstream television appearances as well in your career. I think on the Tyra Banks show and America's Got Talent. What was it like performing on those two places?
Well, it was quite fun, but it was, as they say in Hollywood, there's a lot of waiting, and so in my case, both times, you end up just doing a whole bunch of waiting around, and then finally, you get to come out and perform, and it's sort of a relief to have it, to kind of get it over with in a way. But yeah, they were fun. I mean, it was interesting. Let's put it that way, and it was fun to do. But the waiting part is like the Tyra Banks thing in particular. They had me, show up real early, and then they just kept me in a room the whole time.
Yeah,
and then there was nothing to do in the room, so you just sit there, and then every half an hour someone would knock on the door and kind of talk to you about what you're going to do, and then they disappear, and then they come back again another half, just like.
How long did you have to wait in the green room for that?
Yeah. I'd say I think I didn't get out and do my performance till around 4 o'clock.
And you got in around.
And they had me show up around 10.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's that's the part of Hollywood that's kind of lame. It can be.
So
I've had other interesting experience. I used to do extra work, so I kind of know sort of that part of the world a little bit, and also had a few opportunities. There's a lot of the stuff too in Hollywood is basically you get the opportunity, you even film the opportunity, but then you don't, literally cutting room floor is what happens. So there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, a lot of times you kind of get cut even if the bit's good, and they just because of time constraints, they can't really put in everything.
Well, yeah, and they have other reasonings. So, like I actually did a little spot with the on Eric Andre's show, and that was they cut it out.
It's weird because they cut it out, but I believe the episode itself is still named after you.
Yeah, yeah. Me and Jack Nicholson. I know, and they won't fix it. I don't know why.
I mean, Eric Andre is a very big fan of your work. What was that like, kind of hearing that, getting that kind of praise from him, since considering he's one of like the top comics in the country now?
Yeah, well, when he contacted me at first, I didn't know who he was. So, and then I came on his show, and I kind of still didn't really know who he was. But subsequently, yeah, he's been, he's one of the top, crazy artists, comedians out there, and I'd say crazy in a crazy good way, not, was he a prop comic? What would you call him?
I mean, what I've heard him called is like an absurdist comedian, where it's like the comedy is based on just making no sense and being as ridiculous as possible. And like upending a lot of the forms of your average late night. Like a bit like
right.
I think it's like a bit like one of the reasons why I liked your show a lot is because you guys kind of have that similar kind of vibe. Or like you're kind of upending the form of like, the Bob Ross painting happy little trees.
Yeah. Well, definitely unconventional is what, and I like that. I got to say I like that. I appreciate that. And I want to make more, stuff like that. There's so much seriousness in this world, and we're kind of serious right now, in fact. So let's forget that. No.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of, everyone's kind of very hyper intense and serious about everything. So it's good to get a little bit of comedy in there.
Yeah, but I mean, even in comedy, and the genre of comedy itself has. If you watch Last Comic Standing, which is really gives you a good window of kind of what comedy clubs are all about, because I don't go to them anyway. I don't go to those things. So that's how that's how I see what comedy clubs or stand-up comedy is. And it's like formula, and you hear these comics on the judges talking about each performer, and they keep throwing out some kind of formula about what comedy is, and I'm like, wait a second, there's more to funny than being a formula,
Mm-hmm. So
anyway,
I know you went to like art school at Otis Institute and UCLA, and like I know some people criticize art schools for like teaching the formula almost. What was like your experience at those two places for you?
Well, I gotta say I had a great time, and it was perfect for me. Maybe it's not for everybody. I didn't take it seriously. I barely read any of the any kind of literature, any kind of art, speak, talk. I never played that game, if you will, and it never concerned me. So, I have the degrees, obviously, and what what was so great about going to school to make art was that's what you did. You made art, as simple as that. And yes, I think the real complaint, say, with art school is costs too much.
I mean, that's of all schools at this point, is the cost too much critique.
Right. Maybe it's just all schools, but then also on top of it, art school is like, well, what do you do with that degree once you get that degree? And That's a good question, because it is kind of hard to make a living as an artist, and it can be, particularly if you're not figuring out how to do it, because there's not like any real. Well, the art entertainment industry has some kind of hiring for artists. There's animators and stuff, but if you're just going for fine art, boy, watch out.
So what tips would you give to an artist trying to get their start in the art world?
There's no right way to go about it. You can follow follow what others have done, and maybe hopes that maybe that will kind of springboard you. But when it gets down to it, it is ultimately you got to find your own path. You got to keep on mining the gold, the little nuggets, the little slivers of gold, the veins, the gold veins, and you just keep knocking on that door where the money's coming from. And the sad thing is that's not necessarily going to make you succeed as some kind of artist that you wanted to be, because obviously the money is taking precedence there. So yeah, it's an interesting problem. But if maybe it's not for everyone to really go for it like that. But in my case, I spent years thinking that I wasn't really an artist anyway, because I wasn't. And actually, in some ways, I'm still not really that well connected with, say, the various established kind of art galleries and say museums and stuff. Though that, I think you stay in the game long enough, that can change. Those things. So. But yeah, when you're younger, it's ultimately that you just stay in the game, and ultimately you gotta carve out your own little
carve out your own niche, kind of.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say.
And what?
Yeah.
And what advice would you give people who just want to kind of start doing painting as a hobby, but never really thought of themselves as like artistic types?
Just get some paint on the canvas. Stop dilling around. Stop. There's a lot of thinking that people have when in analytical thinking. You got to snap out of that. At least consider snapping out of it, because I think that holds a lot of people back. A lot of people are hesitant to make a move. Also, put more paint on your brush. I think that tends to be a problem too. A lot of people, when they start off painting, they just kind of real hesitant about getting any paint onto the canvas, and you need to gob that brush up with a bunch of paint and put it down on the canvas.
You think an empty canvas kind of intimidates people in a way?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I just don't think that they're from my experience in noticing people starting off with painting, they just don't get going. Yeah, and I think again, also there's a tendency to want to, say, draw or figure out the painting before getting any paint onto the canvas, and which goes to the kind of the conventional wisdom of, well, you need to know how to draw first before you can paint. And that somehow that got embedded in culture. You ask anyone all over this world, you could go to Zanzibar and you could ask people, and they would also say the same thing. They would agree to that statement. You have to learn how to draw first before you could paint. And you don't. You don't have to do that. That is something that was instilled on us because we didn't have cameras, and so we had probably limited information. But now now the word's out. You don't have to do that. You can skip the drawing part and just get going on with the painting.
So one thing that I've kind of always admired about your show and your composure is that you always retain like a very positive attitude, even when like things are going wrong, even when there's a technical difficulty, or when you have like callers on your show who are very like impolite or like almost borderline harassment. How do you keep that positive attitude like throughout everything you do?
Well, I mean, there are moments where I actually kind of lose it, but I try not to let that happen. You're right. Overall, I try to stay positive. And well, how do I do it? I don't know. I mean, I know if I'm, like I'm talking to you right now, I know I'm aware, that I'm talking to you, and so I think deep down I don't want to create this, I think, yeah, I'm not interested in that, plus on top of it, when you do kind of battle out your the various people calling in or whatnot, you're sort of making an enemy. I'm not interested in making enemies, so I'm not interested in engaging in that, because it's potentially dangerous for one, I'm sort of on a mission ultimately with the idea of encouraging people to try to consider being more creative in their lives, and with that I guess I'm happy to keep, that's enough in a way to keep optimistic in a way,
Like the knowledge that you're helping people become more creative is enough to always be optimistic no matter the situation.
Yeah, and then also, because I'm performing, it is, in some ways, possibly, the opposite of what I'm doing in my regular life at times,
Mm-hmm.
because of other issues that, so it also is the performance can also be this alter ego, or who I kind of would like to be, or because in my regular life maybe I had a bad day or something, and so maybe this can snap out of it.
Yeah. So
I'm not really certain always.
your your on-air persona is like your ideal persona in a way.
Maybe, yeah. But obviously there's a lot of gray areas there. And I also explore a lot of the shows I off and on, I will just to sort of explore the fact that there is no difference between, because a lot of my streams are not so over the top all the time. And so I guess as an artist, I'm exploring that sort of durational aspect with doing these shows. So that, am I this performer or am I just an artist? So I go, questioning that stuff. But yeah, ultimately, I'm not interested in encouraging a lot of anger out there, and I like the positive angle, ultimately. But clearly there are times when that doesn't show up, and I obviously am having my own issues, if you will.
Yeah, that happens to everyone, though. I mean, that's just a normal part of the human experience.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So, what has like been the most interesting guest that you've had on Let's Paint?
Oh well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really point to any particular guest, if you will. uh, you know, they just sort of, they all offer different things, you know. I mean, I got to say that sometimes the surprise is fun, and I've, as a performer, I've actually enjoyed sort of having various bands come on,
Oh.
and like I said, I don't really have a particular interest in any particular music, though. I guess I kind of veer into the more experimental, exploratory music, college radio type of music, maybe. Though I don't even know if that even is the right term anymore. So yeah, there was one time a band came in, and then they brought a fog machine, and they you know, it was just really crazy.
You had to paint with a fog machine and like a band
Yeah,
playing at the same time.
yeah, and it was really loud music, kind of, you know, so I had to yell over the music, and I found that to be really invigorating. I thought that was fun.
Just giving you that extra burst of energy, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I do really welcome and enjoy having some musical backup, and you know, I don't do that so much at all anymore on my internet stream, because I do this through YouTube, and anytime you play any kind of music, then they tag you, and they put on commercials, and then they suck up all the whatever pennies that you know, from your potential performance in your show. They take it, you know, because you played their music. So I don't play any music on my shows really at all, but when I do live performances, I love to have someone playing music along with me. So
Gotcha. So, what happened to the LA public broadcasting? Because I know that all your shows now are just strictly internet streaming.
yeah. Well, think it was in 2008 was when they officially kind of pulled the plug, and you know, I never quite got the exact reasoning, but I think the deep, you know, ultimately these I guess it was Time Warner, which is now Spectrum, but at the time it was Time Warner, and you know, they had, I think, 12 actual facilities around the city of LA where people could come in and do cable access. Now I say 12, but I can only think of maybe 5 or 6. So but supposedly there were, you know, all these other places that were somehow, you know, so they were paying, you know, leasing this, you know, there's a lot of money involved. And I think that the cable companies started questioning, why are they having to provide this free service to the citizens when the satellite companies, you know, Dish TV and all these other guys, Direct TV, they get to come in and they don't have to provide a channel for public access. So already there was a big issue there that they, you know, had good reason to complain about. And then, you know, I think they also threw in the fact that, you know, YouTube now at the time was already letting people provide, you know, their freedom of speech. I think they kind of threw that in as an issue.
They said like YouTube was the equivalent of a public access.
I guess. I don't quite understand really how it went down, but they technically, the city of LA technically still has a public access station channel, but it's not the way it's not run the way it used to be. It's not done the way it used to be, and to have your show on the public access channel, you would have to go through a lot more bells and whistles, and you might even have to pay to have it air, and they would have to screen it and make sure it was, you know, maybe acceptable for the citizens of LA. You know, there's probably some kind of committee. Anyway, no one provides, you know, these kind of cable access shows on that channel anymore.
So that's why you made the switch?
Well, yeah, I mean, but like, you know, for me, I was looking forward to putting stuff, you know, continue to to put stuff up on YouTube, which I was already doing. And so, yeah, no, it's too bad. It really is. But you know, you don't make any money doing cable access, so there was no money to be made. So you know, I had some fun with it. I kind of was okay with the fact that I could maybe just move on. You know, you know, I had done cable access for I guess 95 to 2008. So you know, I did it for 13 years.
Yeah, so you had a long kind of history there.
Yeah, you know, so it was good for me, but I feel bad for a lot of other people that who don't have that opportunity, you know, because you know, they provided a director and they had the cameras, you know, they had people working the cameras and they had the blue screen, and you know, they offered all this wonderful stuff, and now you have to do it all on your own, which is, I guess, okay, but
It's just kind of a different kind of experience when you have to DIY it.
yeah, which, you know, like I said, I'm okay with it in some ways, and it just makes you realize, you know, that it's nice to collaborate with others and have other people help you out, because you know, doing this all on your own is it's for the birds at times, you know.
So, one more question. When you saw, what was it like having Eric Andre as a guest on your show? Because I know he definitely has that, you know, reputation for just being a complete madman. Like, what was he like in just normal life?
He's actually quite pretty normal, frankly, and I think he was when he came on my show as when I did like a pop-up kind of show at this gallery in downtown LA. So I think he had just got off the airplane, and he was very chill, you know, and he was not over the top at all, you know, but he was fine, you know. He just seemed like a normal Joe, you know, normal guy.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I guess he kind of has those two personas that he keeps separate, like his on-air Eric Andre show persona, where he's like kind of torturing guests, and then in regular life, he's just an average guy.
I think you have to be. Yeah, you can't just be over the top all the time. I always heard this story about Chris Rock being on an airplane, and this lady next to him says, "Oh, you're Chris Rock," and he goes, "Yeah, why aren't you funny right now?" You know, or you know, to some extent like that. And he told her, "Well, you got to save the funny.
You got to save the funny for when you need it."
Yeah, you can't be funny all the time. Basically, it's hard to be funny all the time. You got to reboot every day. Groundhog Day every day. You got to do it all over again.
So, do you have any closing statements you'd like to make?
That French fries are, when they're done right, are the best. They are the best food. Probably not the best for you, but they sure do taste good. French fries.
You'll find no argument from me. All right, again, That was John Kilduff of Let's Paint TV. If you want to contribute to his Kickstarter, you can just search Let's Paint TV
actually, that's
on there.
over. That's over.
Oh, your Kickstarter's done?
Yeah.
All right, so if they wanted to find, you're on YouTube, right? So if they put in Let's Paint TV on YouTube, you can find him there.
Yeah.
Is there any other way for people to possibly purchase your art?
Yeah, I got. You can check out, like, I have an eBay store and stuff. You could go to letspainttv.com and you can check out my shop link there.
All right, so if you enjoyed this interview and would like to check out John's work, please take a look at that. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.